Alright, hello everyone. Man, we had some technical difficulties at first because I was ready to go and then all of a sudden the camera feeds just froze and it stopped working. And I usually test the camera because right before I start a live stream, I have the camera already rolling, and so I usually wave my hand in front of the camera right before a live stream to make sure that the screen didn't freeze or something, because sometimes that happens. And in this case, it happened right before I started, like just a second before, because I had already waved my hand in front of the camera. Thankfully, I tested it one more time before starting the stream, and that's when I realized it didn't work. It's this technology, dude. Just... Anyway, good to see you all. Hello, Mark. Hello, Sheridan. Hello, Wild Smiley. Hello, Ozzy. Hello, Sarah. Hello, Mark. Did I say Mark? I already said Mark, I think. Hello, Lisa. Ozzy. Ozzy. Today it is it's kind of a partly cloudy day. Good temperature. Not too cold, not too warm. And it's a good day to have some tea. So I know last week when I did the SS United States live stream, I didn't actually drink any tea or anything because it was just too warm. Well, actually, it's weird because, like I said last week, it wasn't actually... it wasn't like a hot day. It was only 58 degrees Fahrenheit, which is pretty cold. But it was significantly warmer than it's been the last couple months. So to me, it felt like 80 degrees. Honestly, 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's just was a weird day. But anyway, we're getting used to the temperature in the 50s now. So yeah, it's good. All right. Well, why don't I get started on this tea here? Hello, I'm Sleeping Beauty. Hello, RMS Titanic. I just need to empty out some of the warm water in here. So, for those people who are new and haven't seen these tea time live streams, this set of authentic bone china is actual china that was used on the RMS Queen Mary and the RMS Queen Elizabeth. Yeah, some of it dates back to about 1952. Unfortunately, I don't have any of the 1930s stuff. The 1930s stuff is pretty rare. But yeah, because all of it is actual bone china, it needs to be pre-warmed or else the boiling water to make the tea will crack it. So I usually put hot tap water first to start bringing up the temperature, and then I dump out about half of that and then pour in some of the boiling water to bring the temperature up even more. Alright, so... Well, it only says, Alex, try Withered of Chelsea Earl Grey, loose leaf, delicious, the best I've ever had. Okay. Withered of Chelsea. Let me type that in somewhere. Alright. This thing. Lisa says, you're so lucky to have that, Alex. Yeah, it took me about 6 months to collect all of what I have for this stuff, because each piece was purchased individually. I had to just scour eBay and wait till someone posted something, and I was very lucky to find people who really didn't know the value of this stuff, so they were just selling this stuff real cheap, thinking that it really didn't have any value. Because it doesn't look like a normal tea set. You know, it doesn't. It's not all flowery and Victorian looking, so people automatically don't assume that it's worth very much. It looks very plain and it's boxy shaped. You know, it's all square and cube shaped. So people just, if they don't know that it has any value, they just sell it real cheap. And so I was able to buy things just very, very cheap. I think like this sugar bowl cost me $15, which really isn't anything. This cost me $30 because the person had a feeling it was worth something, but that's definitely worth more than $30. It's worth around $90 actually. The teapot, I got that real cheap. I think I paid $65 for the teapot, but other people were selling it for $150, $175. So I was just really lucky that I was just always paying attention and waiting for someone who didn't know the value of this stuff to put it up for sale. And some people sell this stuff overpriced. Some people sell these teapots for $300, and I'm like, I'm not buying that. It's worth a lot, but I mean, when everybody else is selling it for, less than $200, I just don't think, Stormliner says, what is that Titanic model next to you? It's just a model that I got for one of my birthdays years and years ago. I had it in my closet for, I think, 2 years, and then in the year 2012, for the 100th anniversary of Titanic's maiden voyage, I brought it out of the closet and put it together, because it was a kit. And so I put it together, and my dad and I painted it, and I've had it ever since. But I've moved many apartments since then, and as a result of all that moving, it's been heavily damaged, and it's really, really badly. It doesn't look like it because it's far away to you guys, but when you're up close to it, it is so badly damaged. It needs to be restored, but frankly, I don't have the time or the patience to do it. I barely had the patience to build the darn thing in the first place. But yeah, it needs to be restored, because a lot of it is not glued down anymore. The glue just, I don't know, it just weakened over time or something. And so there are things like some of these, which one is it? Like this one, this funnel is loose. It's just, I got a lifeboat dangling on the side. Yeah, it's really bad. And Age Forgotten says, afternoon, Alex. On break at work, so I'll have to rewatch your Tea with Alex after work. Hi to you, and hi to everyone. Have a great day. Thanks so much. I believe that's Candace. Thank you so much, Candace. Hey, Ken, how's it going? Yes, Ozzy, yeah, I saw that SS United States got to her new home ahead of schedule. They were trying to get ahead of a storm, so that way the ship wouldn't be caught in that storm. And so they made it to Mobile earlier than expected. Sir Canister says, thoughts on the New York Coalition. Well, I had a live stream last week all about that. I have a whole chapter in the live stream dedicated to that. Everything's been sectioned into chapters, so you can easily select which one, but I believe it's under the chapter of what if the ship is saved last minute, something like that. It's a chapter named something like that, and I talk about the coalition. I actually got an email from someone who wasn't officially with the coalition, but they're working with the coalition. And the person was like, hey, we'd like to extend a greeting and, see if you would, make a video or something and talk about the coalition's efforts. And I'll be honest with you guys, I told the person, I'm like, I've looked at their website, I've really looked at what they've shown people so far, and they don't have a clear roadmap for what they want to do. They have ideas of the final product. They have ideas of, we want to turn it into this. So I know what they want to do, but they don't have any plan for how they're going to get there. At least not that they've released publicly. And as far as I know, the the museum that the Conservancy wants to build on the coast of Florida is one of the greatest things to happen to the ship in the last 30 years at least. You know, if not the last, 50 something odd years. It's one of the best things to happen for the ship, is that huge museum they want to build. And this coalition has no idea how they're going to save the ship, let alone how they're going to transport it back up to New York, or who's going to pay for the development of it. You know, they asked the Trump administration, but they haven't gotten a response, which doesn't surprise me. You know, so it's like, they have no solid plan in place. They just want to stop the ship from being sunk on the wild hope that something in the future will come of it. But the thing is, the ship has sat in Philadelphia around 30 years at least, and even before that it was really, nothing was happening for it before that. But it sat in Philadelphia for 30 years without any kind of development. And, I don't think anything's going to happen for it. I don't think anybody's going to be interested in paying for that. So that's why I told him, I'm like, I can't, at the moment, endorse what the coalition is doing, because, like I said, the best thing to happen for that ship in the last 30 years at least is this big museum that they're planning, that the Conservancy is planning. And if the coalition stops that from happening, that throws a huge wrench in the works, and then we may never see anything happen for the ship. I mean, what happens if they save the ship and then, and then they have no way to transport it out of there, and the next thing you know, an Alabama judge is like, get this, this vessel out of here because it's been sitting here and you guys have done nothing with it. So it's just like, it's, as far as I can see, it's just throwing a wrench in the works in the wild hope that something will happen, but without any plan yet for how that's going to happen. So I told them, like, if they can come up with a solid plan, and I'll review it and I'll look at it, and it seems like something feasible and not something completely out there, then I'll endorse it. But, it's, I don't see anything going for it. Oh, happy birthday, Stormliner. Oh, nice. You got a model of the RMS Queen Mary. Candace says they're doing tours in Mobile. Really? They're doing tours on the ship in Mobile? Let's see, just reading comments. Sir Canister says they're going to talk about it on the 20th of March. Alright, I'll keep an eye out for that. Because I want to see what plan they have. I just hope it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, we hope to find this person to do, that, and this person to do that. I hope it's more like, oh, we have these people lined up. If they say, oh, we have these people lined up to dedicate their money and their time or their efforts towards the ship, that's a much better plan than, let's just save the ship and then we'll go from there. It's like, so hopefully they have something. Lisa says, did you know there's a small Titanic museum here? I want to say in Albany. Oh no, Cottage Grove, Oregon, not Albany. Cottage Grove. I'm not familiar with where that is. I'll have to look at that later. Diamond says, hey Alex, I have that Queen Mary tea box on your shelf in my collection. Yeah, I remember that's one of the first things I ever bought that had anything to do with the Queen Mary was that tea box. They were selling it on Amazon. This was during the pandemic, so I really, the ship was closed. There was really nowhere to go to get anything Queen Mary. And I saw that they were selling that tea box, and I'm like, oh, wait, they sell that on the ship. And so I bought the tea. The tea was really good. And then I kept the box, and right now inside the box are supplies for the restoration of this, because I bought some stuff to restore the Titanic model, and I'm like, where do I keep this stuff? I'm like, well, I have this empty box up here, so I'll just put it in that. All right, it's time to start brewing the tea. Oh, tour as in, like, you get on a boat that floats around the ship, right? Not on the ship. Because I was like, on the ship seems like, I don't know, like, it doesn't seem like they would do that. But yeah, I can imagine someone selling tickets to, to be on their boat or something as it floats around the ship, and they maybe talk a little bit about the history. That I can see happening. Alright, so 120, and then put this on here. No, that's the best it's gonna go. Alright, Mango says, "Hey Alex, I just went to the Queen Mary last weekend. Awesome. Did you enjoy it?" Hey Kevin. Candace says, "It's a dinner cruise paddle wheel where passengers can go by the ship." Oh, interesting. It's a paddle wheel. That's interesting. Hey Alex, did you know Queen Mary has their own water bottles like in 2011? I know that they've just started introducing some new merchandise. There's even like new stuff like glass tumblers and water glasses, and there's brand new shot glasses and things. There's a coffee mug that I actually think looks pretty cool that I'd like to get, but I don't know how big it is, because I like the big coffee mugs. I don't like the little ones. I drink too much coffee for me to drink out of a little mug. So, but yeah, they have some interesting merchandise coming, especially stuff that's being sold in the new art museum in the main hall. So that's interesting. Isaiah says, did you ever hear the Fort Wilderness Railroad from Disney? Yes. I have heard of that. I've actually researched it before. I thought about making a video about it once. That was a long time ago. But in the end, I just wasn't interested enough to make a video. And now I don't even really cover Disney stuff anymore, so I don't, Stormliner says, what you said about people not realizing the value of what they sell is so true. I found postcards of the White Star Line ship Adriatic on Marketplace for less than €1 or $1. Yeah, some people just don't know. Like, I think sometimes what it is it's like, it's people cleaning out the closets of family members who maybe have passed, and so they're cleaning out the closets, and they see these things like postcards and paper and, sometimes even dusty bone china sitting in the cupboards, and they go, oh, it says Cunard or something like that. That's interesting, but, it belonged to a ship, and they probably think it's worth less than regular china or something because it was on a ship, which, I'm guessing that's what people think or something, because, I don't know, maybe they assume it's like a modern cruise ship where a lot of the plates and stuff are mass manufactured and it doesn't have any value. So they're probably thinking that or something. Because I do notice that similar china from the same 1930s from various places all over the world will always go for more expensive than this. So I'm guessing people probably think, oh, it's cruise ship, you know, porcelain. It probably doesn't have any value or something, and that's probably why they sell it for so cheap. But yeah, people sell a lot of stuff real cheap sometimes on eBay, and back when I had money, I would try to collect some of those things. I'm not much for collecting stuff made of paper, you know, like paper flyers and pamphlets, and so I have a few things. You can see I have a second class menu, a lunch menu up there. I have a Queen Mary program. It talks about what they were doing on that voyage, stuff like that. But I like physical objects. If I'm going to collect antiques, that's kind of what I prefer. Not that I have any room for it or any money for it anymore, but that's the kind of stuff I like. It's funny, I wanted to get more stuff at some point for this tea set, because I really only have, like, you can see there's more teacups and a teapot behind me, but those were cracked by the previous owner, and they're really not safe to drink out of. I mean, you could. They leak a little bit, but not much. But because I know that this china was made with lead underneath the glazed layer, it's really not safe to drink out of when it's cracked. And so I wanted to get uncracked versions. But people on eBay, they sell this stuff whether it's cracked or not without even telling you. And sometimes these cracks are very hairline cracks, which you can see when you hold the item up to you, but when you take a picture for eBay, you can't see it. And that's how I got those cracked items, was because the person sold it without telling me that they were cracked or damaged in any way. And you could tell that they were thermal cracks. It was someone who didn't know that you're supposed to pre-warm the stuff, and they just cracked it because they didn't know you're supposed to pre-warm it. So I got a little distracted. The tea was brewed for an extra minute. Or I should say steeped, not brew. But it steeped for an extra minute. That might be a little strong, but hopefully not too bad. I usually put that down there. I'm gonna heat up this cup one more time. Well, actually, no, I'll just dump the whole thing out and then fill it. Because the cup is not hot enough. Just let that sit for a second. One of the... Evan Scott says one of the gift shops is gone on the Queen Mary. I mean, technically it's not gone. It's still there. It's an art museum now. But they still sell gifts in the art museum, just not all the stuff they used to sell. They've moved a lot of that merchandise to the library right across the main hall, and also to the main gift shop, which is down on the dock. But that space is still open, and you can go in there, and it's an art museum. It's all the artwork that was featured on the ship back in the days when it used to sail, which I think is really cool, because some of that artwork was put in storage and hasn't been seen in a long time. One of those things was the Madonna of the Atlantic, which has not been in that room for maybe 50 years. Honestly, the Madonna of the Atlantic, I don't think it's been in that room for about 50 years, or 30 years at least. So, yeah. So some interesting news about stuff that's going on at the Queen Mary. So they've installed brand new doors on the veranda grill, which is pretty neat because the previous doors were very water damaged. I think they were made of actual wood. They were not original to the ship. They were put in by Disney in the 1990s or something like that. But they just, over the years, just have not lasted. The new doors on Veranda Grill, I haven't seen a close-up picture, but they do appear to be steel doors that have a veneer on them, like a vinyl veneer to make them look like wood, but they're made of steel so that they last. That's what it appears to be. And the inside, the inner workings, the push bar to open the doors, those are brass. So they shine real brightly. They look really nice, actually. It looks great. I like it. So they've done that. And then, what was the other thing that they recently did? So besides the drawing room being the new art gallery, they did something recently. Oh, the Unicorns in Battle artwork, which I've been telling you for weeks and weeks, has been undergoing restoration, has finally been unveiled. Not officially. They're still going to do an official unveiling later on. But it's finally been unveiled, and it looks great. I think to the untrained eye, you might not be able to tell the difference. But if you remember back before, the Unicorns in Battle artwork was so badly damaged that you could see kind of the rough, it was like I think it was a red gesso, honestly. I think the underneath of it is like a red gesso, and you could see that when there's supposed to be like a white gesso over that, and or cream color, I should say, like a cream color gesso over that. And so over the years, it's worn away in certain places where you could see the red underneath. And they've fixed all of that. And then they've also shined up some of the silver and gold on it, because it was given silver and gold leaf to bring the details out, and all that was clean. So they didn't put new silver and gold. It looks like they just cleaned the old silver and gold and shined it up, and so it looks much better than it did before. And it seems that the entirety of that was paid for by QMI Restore the Queen. I know that Queen Mary Heritage Foundation's name is on it, but to my understanding, they have yet to donate towards it because they haven't run any fundraisers yet. So as far as I know, QMI Restore the Queen had paid for the entirety of that. Although they don't want to, they don't want to attract attention that way. They don't want to say, "Oh, we did that." They're humble about it. They say, "Oh, it was a joint effort," but I know it was QMI that paid for the entirety of it. So yeah, that's a positive thing. And then I hear from QMI Restore the Queen that their next project, they're going to talk about it to the management soon. So I don't know what it is. They didn't tell me, and that's fine. But I'm just excited that they've got another project lined up, another restoration project for the ship. And as QMI does more and more restoration projects with the Queen Mary, they might be able to tackle bigger and bigger things. I know years ago I was talking to Mary Rower, the executive director of QMI Restore the Queen, and one of the things that she wanted to do was eventually someday to help fundraise for the restoration of the lifeboats and davits. So I think that's one of the big goals for the far future. Not the near future, guys. I don't want you guys to be confused. The lifeboats and davits, nothing's going to happen with them in the near future because it's a huge, expensive project. I mean, I would guesstimate it would probably be between, $10 to $20 million. I mean, that's a huge gap, but a paint job on the Queen Mary to paint the whole ship is $5 million. And I think to restore all that steel, to replace broken parts of steel, to build replica lifeboats, to, they have to rebuild they can't just put lifeboats on there. They have to rebuild the side shell of the promenade deck to hold the weight. And all that side shell would have to be replaced. That we're talking about, close to 1,500 feet of side shell that has to be replaced, linear feet of side shell. I mean, all that work, I'm estimating would probably cost between $10 to $20 million. And so that's definitely a goal for the far off future. So, but I know that that's something that they've talked about in the past that they want to do. So I'm really excited. I hope to see more of the restoration work going on the ship. So, and over the years, over the last 2 years, I should say, I've emailed management at the Queen Mary, giving them suggestions for not only restoration work that could be done easily, but also stuff that could earn them money in the short term, as well as stuff that is for the long term. So I've given them suggestions and things, and quite a few of the suggestions they've implemented into the ship already. And they've put their own spin on it, of course, because they know what they need to operate the ship. And so, and I technically am not, I haven't seen their finances. I don't see how they run their operation. So they have to kind of finely tune the ideas I give them, and then they implemented most of them, I think. Pretty much all the stuff I've suggested they've started putting in some shape or form. And some of that stuff might have been ideas they've already had, honestly, because I imagine I'm not the first person to think of some of those things. But I know, like, one of the things, for instance, was I suggested doing kind of like an all-in-one kind of voyage on the ship. So the idea is that you pay for a weekend, let's say, to stay on the ship, and you get all these activities planned out for you. You've got a selection of things you can do. It's like taking a voyage on the Queen Mary, but the ship doesn't go anywhere. And they really liked that idea, and they've already implemented it, and the last time they did that was back in December. And as far as I know, they plan to do more of those in the near future, because it booked out so quick. The first time they did it was July of 2024, and it booked out the day that, I mean, within the hour, actually. Within the hour they announced it, it booked out. And then they waited till November to announce the December one that they were doing, and then that booked out within an hour. So that was actually pretty cool that idea worked. So let's get to some comments here. Let's see. Edward says, "Hi Alex, is there any films of the Queen Mary when it was moved into its berth in Long Beach?" There are very short clips and snippets. I don't have anything that's, several minutes long that shows the whole process, but there's clips and snippets of it, and I have that on my computer, but I've never published them on YouTube or anything. So I don't know if they're out there on YouTube, but I have them on my computer. I just I plan to use it for one of my documentaries. I just haven't made the documentary yet. Sir Canister says, "Isn't there a plan to have a dry dock dedicated to Queen Mary and other ships so that it makes the Queen Mary temporary? If so, would that make the Queen Mary temporary closed?" Long Beach is interested in building a dry dock somewhere north of the Queen Mary, and that would service not just the Queen Mary, but yeah, like you said, other ships, other cruise ships, other freight carrying ships and stuff like that, cargo ships. They want to do that because they know that the Queen Mary needs to be dry docked. And the problem with Queen Mary is you can't take her really anywhere else to be dry docked. The very work that she needs done is the very work that is preventing her from leaving the harbor. So it's kind of like she doesn't have a choice. She has to stay where she is. And, and she can't leave the harbor. So, and floating dry docks can't float into the harbor. The harbor's too shallow. So a floating dry dock would have to go outside the harbor, and the ship can't leave the harbor. So the harbor, for those that are wondering, is surrounded by a massive wall called Queen's Gate. Believe it or not, it was not named after the Queen Mary, but the Queen's Gate surrounds the entire port of Long Beach, and the Queen Mary cannot leave the Queen's Gate. So, at least not without significant alterations to allow her to be, towed out to sea or something, for transport. So, they have to build a dry dock nearby the ship. And people have asked, why don't they just turn the lagoon that she's in into a dry dock? But that would be an exorbitant cost, and it would only be used once every 25 years. So it's a big cost for nothing. And so they want, if they're going to build a dry dock, they want to be able to make money from it. And they can make money from it if they service other ships and things. That's why they want to build a separate dry dock. So they're looking into it, but there's no, blueprints ready or anything like that. They haven't even selected a site yet, as far as I know. They're still just kind of surveying places and stuff, because it would be a huge cost. And, there's a reason why dry docking ships here in the United States is super expensive. We don't have enough dry docks for ships, especially on the West Coast. And a lot of that is just because the labor, costs for restoring ships or doing refurbishment work on ships is so exorbitant that most companies would rather go to different countries to get that work done. And here, the labor is just too expensive. And so that's why there's very few dry docks, and that makes the expense even more expensive because the dry docks are overbooked. So it'll be interesting to see how that shapes up. But yeah. So let me just get some of this in here. I've been talking, I haven't drank any of my tea. Put that there. And Sheridan says, when Cunard built Queen Mary, did they put the lifts or elevators in them, or did people have to take the stairs going up and down the ship? Wait, what? When Cunard built the Queen Mary, they put lifts or elevators in them, or did people have to... Yeah, the ship was built with the ship was built with lifts. So it wasn't something that was added later. They already had them when the ship was built. And back then, the way it worked was there was a call button that you pressed, and that would alert the lift attendant who was riding the lift to bring the lift down to meet the level that someone had pressed the call button. And you just told the lift operator what level you wanted to go to, and he would move it's a lot like in the scene on Titanic where the guy would close the little cage thingy, the I forget what you call those things, it's like an accordion style bars or cage or whatever it is. You would close those, and then there was exterior doors that were solid, like solid steel, not steel, but silver bronze, and those would close, so you couldn't see the elevator shaft after the lift went up or down. And the operator would just move a handle, and then he would take you up to the level where you wanted to be. And that's how it used to operate. Those elevators were built by the Otis Elevator Company back in 1935 to 1936. There were 21 different lifts on the ship. Not all of them were for first class. Not all of them were for passengers. Many of them were for the various crew and hotel services. So there were a lot of service elevators on the ship as well. I believe first class had 7 elevators, and then there were 3 elevators for third class, and then there was 1 elevator for third class. So I think if I did my math correctly, that means there were 11 elevators dedicated to passengers, and the rest, the other 10, were for various crew and service needs. Today, those elevators, 2 of them still operate. Actually, technically 3 of them still operate. 2 of the original elevators located port side, right next to each other. Those still operate today. The Otis Elevator Company has since come back several times to repair and restore those elevators, because the Otis Company still exists. And those elevators are now like modern elevators in the sense that they're automatic. So you press the call button, it comes down to you, you go into the elevator, you press what level you want to go on the button pad, and then 2 sets of doors close, and then you go to whatever level you want to go to. But the interior woodwork of the elevators is still there. And then the 3rd elevator that still functions is used as a service elevator for the crew, and that's over in second class area, the second class forward lifts. But only one of those 2 lifts is in operation. Let's see. RMS Titanic says, do you think they will put back the cinemas on the Queen Mary? I mean, technically 2 of them still exist. They've never done anything to them. So the 3rd class cinema is still just as it was. In fact, if they wanted to, they could still play movies in there. Because the cinema, nothing's been altered in the 3rd class cinema. They just, they even have the chairs. I mean, not the original chairs, but they have chairs that they could put out for people to watch stuff. So technically the 3rd class cinema, it still exists. There's nothing wrong with it. And they still use that room for meetings and things like that. The original 1st class cinema, not the one that was put in later, but the original 1st class cinema is technically the 1st class main lounge. That's where they would play movies at first. But later on, they took out the starboard gallery and a few other things to install a different kind of cinema, a separate cinema. And that one was removed to make way for kitchen space and stuff like that for the different starboard side restaurants. But technically the main lounge can still play movies. They even have a projection screen still hanging from the stage. And they have the ability to put projectors in the projector booth, which is inside of the Unicorns in Battle artwork. So technically 2 of the ship's cinemas are still there. And then there's a 3rd new cinema, which was, I don't remember when it was put in, but I think 2004 or something like that. But they have what they call a 4D theater. But that theater can be used as a modern cinema if they really wanted to, because it's built like a modern cinema. So honestly, they have plenty of places on the ship that they could play movies if they really wanted to. They just don't. I wish they did. That was one of my suggestions, was to make the main lounge, into a nighttime movie theater. So when nighttime came around, before it got too late into the evening, they should play a movie, and they could serve like dinner or dessert or snacks or something, and drinks and stuff like that, and they could make money off of that event. Right now they do a movie night, but they do it out on the lawn outside the ship, and those movie nights are free. And I'm like, that's cool that it's free. That is cool. But they should do one on the ship that they make a whole event out of, and then earn money off of that. And then they could use the main lounge for that. That way it's not sitting empty all the time. So that's one of those things where I'm kind of like, that's one of those suggestions they haven't taken from me, and I wish they would. Let's see here. American Loyalist, thank you so much for the donation. What's going to happen to the sub at Queen Mary? So the submarine is going to eventually be removed by the city. They've tried for the last couple of years to force the previous owners to pay for its removal because the previous owners abandoned it. And they have not, in the last 2 to 3 years, been able to contact those previous owners. They won't answer any kind of correspondence or phone calls or anything. Their representatives won't even get back to the city of Long Beach when they make those calls and emails. So they're ignoring the problem, and so it's my belief, it's not official yet, but it's my belief that by the end of the year, like, I'm not saying at the end of the year, it could be any time between now and the end of the year, the city will use its power of eminent domain to remove the submarine. So that's something I have a feeling will happen this year. I have no official proof of that, but I have seen city engineers and stuff. They've been touring the submarine once in a while, and I believe that's so that way they can see what work needs to be done for its removal. So the submarine will be removed and not even scrapped, just completely thrown away, because even the metal on it is not worth scrapping. So it'll just be broken apart and thrown away. Now, another thing that's happening that I kind of forgot to mention in the news was is that I forget what time of year this year, but it'll probably happen before fall. It's got to happen this summer, I think. Is they're going to demolish the old English village that is next to the Queen Mary. There's an abandoned English village that was built there in the 1970s to help attract attention to the Queen Mary. It's fallen into disrepair the last 10 years to the point where now it's pretty much condemned, and it's just more of a nuisance than anything. It's not worth restoring because it's in such bad shape. It's full of mold and riddled with all kinds of termites and vermin, and it's just not worth it to restore it. So they're gonna actually demolish the English village this year, so that way they can pave over it to make more parking lot, because they're going to later this year open a temporary concert venue that will be there permanently. It's a temporary structure, but it'll be there permanently until a much larger, more permanent venue can be constructed, near the bow of the Queen Mary. Not near the bow of the Queen Mary, but you know what I mean. Over by there's a little park there. And so they need more parking space until then, because that concert venue will take place on the Queen Mary parking lot. So they're going to demolish that village, pave over it to build more parking for now. And so that's kind of an interesting thing happening there. I better drink some of this tea. I'm out of, cream and stuff, so I have to use milk. And I don't like using milk in my tea because it just tastes like it waters it down, which is odd because tea is water, but Earl Grey can take it. It's really good. Alright, so Tanner says, love your channel. Have you heard if they plan to fix the pool issues? Do you think they might refill it with water once they fix the structural issues? So just to make sure everybody's aware, because I know not everybody's seen my video about the pool. Technically, there's no structural issues with the pool room, just the pool tank. The tank that holds the water for swimming. That thing is badly corroded. I don't think it would even be able to support the weight of a human person without them falling through it. That being said, there is a perfectly intact, what they call a cofferdam, which is really just a steel box that surrounds the pool tank. In the event that the pool tank were to leak or something, it wouldn't fall into the turbo generator room below. The whole thing is surrounded by a cofferdam that was built in 1934, and so So yeah, so the pool cannot currently be filled with water, but as Tanner was asking, is will they restore the pool room? Will they possibly build a new pool tank and fill it with water to be used? The honest answer is, I really don't know. They don't have any official plans for the pool room right now. And part of that is because the restoration of that room would cost so much money that, I mean, it's oh my gosh, it would just cost a lot of money. I mean, not nearly as much money, I don't think, as the, as the restoration of the davits and the lifeboats and the, the promenade side shell. But I do think that it would be a couple million, maybe $3 million to restore that room and get it functional again. And that doesn't sound like such a big amount of money when you think about the other projects on the ship that, cost a lot. But when you need to raise funds and money for that, I mean, it's difficult. I mean, QMI Restore the Queen, they hold fundraisers, and, they're lucky if they get $2,000 or $5,000 when they do each of those fundraisers. So it would take a lot of fundraisers to do that. Granted, there are a lot of people interested in seeing the pool room restored, so maybe there might be even more money that people are willing to invest. But $3 million worth of it, I think that'll take a couple of years to fund that. But I have heard rumor, the Queen Mary has not announced it yet, but I have heard rumor that they want to build a new spa on the ship for the hotel guests. Now, I'm going to go off into what I think might happen, but it's not official. Let me just say it right now. It's not official. I've never been told any details. I'm going off of something because I suggested it to management. You see, the Queen Mary Hotel, not the original RMS Queen Mary ship as it was in the 30s through the 60s, but the hotel in Long Beach today, it had a spa on M deck, and they used like 2 or 3 passenger cabins and converted them into a spa, and it was okay looking, but at times it looked a bit cluttered. It didn't look like a spa. It looked like they literally just reused some rooms on M deck. And what they did when the ship reopened in 2023 was those rooms stayed closed, but they restored them back to being hotel rooms. And I'm not certain, but I do believe at least one of them is currently being used as a hotel room on the ship. So I don't think they want to bring the spa back in that area because they want more hotel rooms. And, if that spa takes up 2 or 3 hotel rooms, well, that's less money that they'll make overall. So where would they put this spa, you ask? Well, I'd say like 6 to 8 months ago, I gave another email to management because they really liked my first one with all my suggestions. So I gave them another email with suggestions, and one of them was, they have this space on our deck that used to be dedicated to the Turkish baths. Just like Titanic, Queen Mary had Turkish baths. They didn't look as fancy as Titanic's Turkish baths. They were really more like, if you can imagine, a giant Art Deco bathroom. So you might not think that's fancy, but for the 1930s, it looked fancy. And I said, that space today is storage. Or at least that's what I said to them. But a friend of mine tells me that it's actually used as a security office on the ship. But anyway, I said that space, they could turn that space into a modern spa. Now, the reason why I didn't say original looking, the reason why I didn't say restore it to how it used to look, is because I have pictures of that original Turkish bath, and it really was nothing to write home about I mean, it was tiles on walls, probably seafoam green and white ceilings, no decorations. Like I said, it looked like a 1930s bathroom. It really did not look anything particularly beautiful. And today's modern people, when they go to a spa, they want the spa to look beautiful. So I suggested they build a modern spa where the Turkish baths used to be. And as part of the funding for that, they could convert the original first-class swimming pool, which is right next door. The original first-class swimming pool is right next door to the Turkish baths. That's how it was originally designed. And use the swimming pool, rebuild it, and make it so it's at least filled with 3 feet of water, which is considered a shallow pool. But that could be part of the spa experience. So just like on the Queen Mary 2, if you go to the Queen Mary 2 on a voyage or something, they have a modern spa, and it includes a relaxing pool. So it's dimensionally the size of a swimming pool, but it's shallow, so it's not meant for swimming or diving. You're supposed to just kind of wade around in there, just kind of float around and just relax. And I thought they could do that on the Queen Mary. It doesn't have to be a deep pool that you dive into and swim, because dimensionally it's not big enough on the Queen Mary to really do any major swimming. Like, you can't really do laps in it because it's a very small pool. So I'm like, it could be a wading pool for the spa. And that way, if you want to use it, you have to pay for the spa, so that earns the money for the restoration of the pool, you know? And so that was kind of my idea. And at least the pool room, the swimming pool room, will remain with its original Art Deco look, but it'll be restored. And then the spa will be modern looking. And in fact, even in the days when the Queen Mary was in operation at sea, if you were using the Turkish baths, there was a door to get into the pool room from there, and you could finish off your treatment, your spa treatment, by a quick float around in Queen Mary's pool. So that was my suggestion to management. They never acknowledged that that specific suggestion. Which actually, I'm of the belief that no news is good news. So I figure if they didn't respond to it, that probably means that they like it. They probably like it a lot. Because it's an idea that restores the pool, but earns them money. And they like those kinds of ideas. Because they do need, it's a business, they need to make money. So I hope that they take that idea, and that's what they're doing. But as far as I know, the only thing that's been said is that they do want to have a spa somewhere on the ship. I just don't know where it's going to be. I just don't know. So let's cross our fingers that they're going to build it in the old space that used to be the Turkish baths, and it'll include the restoration of the swimming pool room to be used as part of the spa experience. I also mentioned, just in case people are like, well, but a hotel needs a pool. Just in case you're of that opinion, I did tell in that suggestion that hotel guests, they could pay a very small fee. I'm imagining in my head like maybe $10 extra, but a very small fee to use the pool for relaxation if they don't want to use the spa. So, but only for hotel guests, not for day visitors. So that was an idea I floated to them. That's the complete idea. But like I said, they haven't acknowledged that idea, and there's no details yet on what spa they want to build or where it's going to be. So, Sleeping Beauty says, have you ever attended a Sunday brunch on the Queen? I heard it's over $100. I haven't attended a Sunday brunch, especially because the last time I was on the ship was earlier in February, and I hadn't been on the ship in 5 years before that. So I haven't been there. Now, some there's some mixed reviews about the Sunday brunch. Some people want to know, is it worth $100? So I am a former chef. I am, culinary school trained. For the most part, I can look at food and tell if it's fresh or not, if it looks like it's tasty or not. The only thing I can't tell is if they put too much salt in it, really, honestly. So, but when I look at, because I've seen a lot of photos and video of the, I've seen a lot of photos and videos of the Sunday brunch, and aside from if they put too much salt or if they, spilled a chemical in the recipe, other than that, I can't see anything wrong with it. I honestly, when I look at the seafood, I'm like, that seafood looks really fresh. It doesn't look, like it's, it was, captured off the, I don't know, coast of, I don't know. It doesn't look bad, and it doesn't look like it's been sitting in a freezer for months and months and months. It looks like it's pretty fresh. And what they offer, by technicality, all the meats and seafoods and stuff that they offer, and the handcrafted desserts, I mean, you'd be hard-pressed to find a brunch that serves that and doesn't cost that much. I mean, I think, the kinds of foods they serve at that brunch is the kind of stuff you might find at, a brunch at a Ritz-Carlton or something. Honestly, at least the kinds of foods that they serve. Now, the only images I've seen, I've watched a lot of videos, I've looked at a lot of photos of the brunch. None of it looks like it had been sitting out for a long time. For instance, they have a Mexican section, and let's say you look at the beans. If the beans have been sitting out for a while, they'll look like, hardened rock. They have a specific look to them that they've dried out. And I've never seen images of the beans dried out. There's the meats look juicy, they don't look dry, so that tells me that they haven't been sitting. All the seafood is on fresh ice. The ice doesn't look dirty. It doesn't look, because when you have a brunch and you have all this seafood sitting on ice, you know if it's been sitting out when the ice is dirty. It's got little bits of seafood on it, or maybe the ice looks half melted. But every image I've seen of the seafood, all the ice looks like it just came out of the freezer. So, so to me, the brunch looks like it's worth, $90. I don't know if it's worth $100, but then again, I've never eaten there. But it does look like it's worth at least $90. So if you're willing to pay the extra $15 or so for the brunch, it might be worth it, especially because I heard they have bottomless mimosas. That's another interesting thing. So, yeah, I mean, it looks worth it, but there's been mixed reviews, but sometimes, I don't know, there's social media people who say, oh, this was the worst brunch I've ever had, and I kind of go, I don't know, because sometimes with social media, people will over-dramatize whether something was good or whether they hated it, just because it makes for a better video, it makes for more clicks. They put titles like worst and most expensive buffet I've ever had or something like that. And, and it might have been just one issue that they hated about it, but then they're like, you know what, I gotta make this into a hate video, or they might look at something and go, it's got issues, but I really liked this, so I've got to make this into a I love video. So it's one of those things where it's hard to trust what people on social media say about the brunch. As far as I know, most of the regular people who are not on social media, or not influencers at least, when regular people eat the food there and they tell other people online, oh yeah, I had the brunch, most of those people all say the food was great. So I'm more inclined to believe the regular folks, because no one's paying them money to say yay or nay on it. So, I don't know. So that's kind of my take on it. And like I said, from my chef's eye, there's nothing wrong with the buffet. It looks great, and the foods that they offer are normally very expensive, which is the reason why the price is so high. So yeah. Sir Canister says a cofferdam a cofferdam or however it's pronounced would suffice. Around the pool. Even American Loyalist says cofferdam for the Queen Mary. I think you both are talking about like around the ship. So to install a cofferdam around the ship, you might as well build a dry dock. It's the same thing. A cofferdam and a dry dock are pretty much the same thing. If you can drain water out of it, it's a dry dock. And to do that, you're going to pay the same price as building a dry dock. You know, you've got to build a concrete slab underneath that is, you know, I think the King George V graving dock in Southampton has 30 feet of concrete on the bottom and 30 feet of concrete on the sides. Or not concrete, but I think it's... no, I think the graving dock was concrete on the sides too. So 30 feet of concrete on the sides, that's a lot of concrete. And, you know, and a lot of engineering. Especially because since it would be right there on the bay, it not only has to be able to drain the water around the ship, but it has to hold back the water from the bay. If you're going to pay for that, you might as well build it somewhere else and earn money off of it. Because like I said, the Queen Mary only needs to be dry docked once every 25 years. Not every year. There's no need to dry dock the ship every single year. It would need to be dry docked every 25 years. So if you're going to build this big, expensive thing and then forget about it for 25 years, it's gonna, you know, things on it are not going to function anymore. And so you might as well build a separate one that will make money month after month after month for servicing other ships. So I actually think it is not financially wise to build a cofferdam around the Queen Mary, because if you're going to build that, you might as well build it somewhere else and make money off of it. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. Diamond says, I have about almost everything you can buy on Queen Mary, and I have made a video of it. Okay, cool. Podcast Film says, hi Alex, are the door openers at the top of the Queen Mary's doors original to the ship? You mean the dampers? So they're little devices that are screwed into doors that prevent a door from slamming. If you're asking about the dampers, I think here and there are some that are original, but the ones on the fire doors are not original. So, all down most of the corridors and rooms of the Queen Mary, there are fire doors everywhere. And the dampers on those, as all the ones I've seen on the fire doors, are not original. They're pretty old, they date back to the 70s, but they're not original. But there are certain places on the ship, certain places where there's a door to like a phone booth or something, and the damper on those is original. So, yeah. So it really depends on what you're looking at. It will depend on whether it's from the 70s, the 90s, or whether it's original. So, one way to tell if it's original is the dampers from the 1930s or even the 1960s. They're very bulbous and round mostly, but they have a slight T shape to them, a slight T shape, and they're roughly this big or even this small even, but you know, about yay or nay, not yay or nay, about this size pretty much. The ones that are not original are usually, I'm sorry, let me go back. The ones that are original are usually like made of bronze or brass, so they have a very brass color to them. But the ones that are not original are usually like a steel color, so silver or something like that, and they're usually a slightly different shape. They could be various shapes, and they have a slightly different design to the arm that connects to the door. So that, that's just kind of a way to tell. Chris says, "Hey Alex, it's too bad that during SS United States' last voyage, it's too bad that they really didn't open up the speed with the ship to see how fast it really could go heading back to the United States." Oh, its last official voyage. Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, and I have a feeling not a lot of people know this, but when the SS United States would build up speed, even when it went on its maiden voyage at 34 knots, the ship was shaking and shuddering like you wouldn't believe. They realized that the ship really couldn't go that fast without making an extremely uncomfortable voyage, because with a ship of that size and the power necessary to make it go that speed, it's very difficult to prevent the whole ship from shaking and shuddering. You can reinforce the heck out of a ship, but at some point you have to concede that, the ship is just going to shake as it tries to move. Because, I don't know if you remember in some of my videos I talk about cavitation. It's what happens when a propeller moves so fast that the water that is displaced cannot fill the void fast enough, so it creates a mini vacuum. Bubbles, essentially, but they're bubbles of vacuum, not air. And when those bubbles collapse, they collapse at supersonic speed, and that hammers at the metal constantly, and that will erode and degrade the propellers. If SS United States wanted to go 34 knots all the time, they'd be replacing their propellers, every month or so, honestly. I mean, especially if it went faster than 34 knots. But even then, that's not even the biggest issue. The biggest issue is the comfort. I mean, SS United States' maiden voyage was not comfortable. People said it. They were like, it went fast, but the whole ship was shaking and vibrating, and, because the ship was going so fast, it was hitting ocean swells like concrete. It was just bam, bam with each ocean swell that the bow was hitting. It hit it like it was breaking through concrete. So yeah, so I imagine that if they wanted to make it go full out for the last voyage and make it, some people say it could do 38 knots. I mean, there's no official word on that, but if it did go 38 knots, I imagine, man, that would be an uncomfortable ride. But yeah, so that's something that I don't think a lot of people know about the SS United States, because a lot of people talk about the speed, but then they don't talk about how uncomfortable it was to go at that speed, which is why the SS United States had a service speed of 28 knots, just like the Queen Mary, because they just discovered that that's the fastest you can go while still having a relatively comfortable ride across the Atlantic. So, and it's also cheaper to go at that, because the faster you make a ship go, exponentially more is the usage of fuel. So it's not on a linear scale, it's on an exponential scale. So you have to use way more fuel just to get that extra knot of speed. So it was actually cheaper and more comfortable to go at 28 knots, which is still pretty fast. I mean, even the fastest cruise ship today, it struggles to get to 24 knots. So the fact that Queen Mary and other ships from a century before were going, 28 knots as a cruising speed, just like a comfortable speed, that's pretty fast. Let's see. Ozzy, I'm not sure what you said. Sorry, your message was kind of mixed up, so I don't really know what you're asking. Miles says there's a very recently posted video on YouTube that is a tour of the SS United States back in the 80s showing intact spaces and furniture. Yep, there is. Steven says, I'd just like to say how much I like the new Queen's Cross podcast. Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, we love doing that podcast, honestly. It's really fun because we get to talk about Queen Mary and, and Queen Elizabeth, and, we could do other Cunard queens as well. I think in the future we could probably talk about the QE2 and about the Queen Mary too. So we like that podcast. It's mostly going to stick to Cunard queens, but I don't see a reason why we can't do an occasional episode about another Cunard ship or something, like Mauritania or something. Nels, hey Alex, good to see you. Good to see you too. Miles High says they might have to put a cofferdam around the sub to remove it. It's so fragile. Now that is something, it would be like a floating cofferdam. So it's, yeah. It's like basically a net with floaties on either side. Yeah, that's something they might have to do to get it out, because it is very fragile. One of the concerns that the engineering firm had, and people don't believe me, I don't know why, They literally had an engineering firm, the Elliott Bay Design Group. They came down and looked at the submarine to determine the best way of removing it. And one of the things they said was, this submarine is so badly corroded and damaged. First of all, you can't reopen it as an attraction. And second of all, if you try to remove it, almost anything you do, it risks it breaking apart, and that could hurt or kill the crew who are trying to dismantle it. So like trying to lift it out of the water with cranes is the best option, but even still, it could break apart, and they have to use 2 cranes to do it because it's so huge and heavy. That thing is like almost 300 feet long. So it's so huge and heavy they have to use like 2 massive cranes to lift it out of the water. If it breaks apart and stuff as the cranes are lifting it, the cranes could fall backwards, because cranes have to use counterweights, so that way they don't fall. They have to use counterweights, and so if you suddenly lose the load, the cranes could go whoop like that and fall backwards. So it presents itself as a huge danger no matter what they do. But there's people that just don't believe me when I tell them that. I'm like, you can see there's engineering reports online that you can get from the city of Long Beach that talk about it, and they're like, no, they could restore that. And it's like, you at some point you have to admit that the hull is just like worn away to practically tissue paper. It is not safe. So yeah, I'm just venting a little frustration about that, because there's people that just refuse to believe that it is that badly corroded. And it's like, well, what do you expect? It's been abandoned since 2015, and even before 2015, they never did any maintenance on it ever. Since they installed it in 1998, it hasn't had any kind of maintenance whatsoever. So it's like, what do you expect? But anyway, let's see. American Loyalist about lighting up the Queen Marys for sports teams. I mean, I honestly don't know. Maria says, will the third-class nursery and the synagogue be restored on RMS Queen Mary? We've heard rumor that the third-class nursery will be restored, but it's never been officially announced, so I really don't know. And then the synagogue, there's definitely no word or plan yet on that. They've never even mentioned that they want to restore it. They can, though. It is a possibility. I would like them to. I've even mentioned in one of my suggestions that they restore the synagogue. But as to whether that'll happen, I mean, none of us really know. None of us really know. Charles says, "Hi from Scotland, Alex. Good to be on live chat." Good to see you, Charles. Miles High says, "I saw that third class nursery is reopening and has artifacts from all 3 classes." Yeah, I was the first one to report on that. I was given that information by someone else, and they told me, right off the bat, they said, this is not official, it's still considered rumor, but, the third class nursery is going to be restored. And so, that was the day that I was on the Queen Mary. So we actually went over to the third class nursery, and the door was open. Now, that room, if anybody's ever seen pictures of it before, was filled with stuff. I mean, to the ceiling. It was a storage room of various parts for air conditioners and stuff like that, and heaters and whatnot. So it was just filled with wooden shelves full of parts for things. And it was a storage room for the longest time. And we went there, and it was completely empty, completely cleaned out. The light fixtures were turned on. There was fresh paint, fresh white paint on the walls. So, yeah, I think they're going to, restore it. I mean, why else empty that room and paint it, So, yeah. But, as soon as I reported that on my video, then it went all over the internet. People were talking about it. And I was kind of like, oops. Because I was like, it's still a rumor, it's not official. But everybody was talking about it. I think that's actually my fault. I should have made it more clear that it was rumor. I should have made it more clear. But, because I talked to some people, that are, in contact with the Queen Mary. And, because one of the other things I said was that there was unofficial news that the original first-class nursery on Promenade Deck would be turned into an eatery, such as possibly a sushi bar. And some people that actually work at Queen Mary said that's not going to happen. So that is just a rumor, but yeah, it's I don't really know what's going to happen to the first-class nursery. But then now there's recent talk. There's recent talk from people at Queen Mary saying they're going to build an ice cream shop somewhere on the ship. That's also unofficial news, but yet it comes from sources on the Queen Mary. So they say they're going to build an ice cream shop. And I'm like, well, where are they going to build that? Because I can't think of any place on the ship that there's plumbing and stuff ready for them to build an ice cream shop. Anywhere you put a food location on the ship, you need to install, this is all California law, you need to install floor drains. Floor drains are literally built into the floor, and they have to be able to run, and empty out into like a grease trap and stuff like that. Like, it's a whole plumbing issue. And you gotta have that already. And can you really imagine them drilling, more and more holes into the decks of the Queen Mary? No, they're probably gonna use up every place on the ship that ever served food. And so there's 2 places on the ship I can think of that are not used for food, but used to be, and probably still have the plumbing for it. And number one thing is the old first-class nursery. In the 1990s, it was an espresso bar, or something of that sort. It was a food location of some kind, either drinks or food, but either way, plumbing. So I know that the first-class children's playroom used to be a food location. So that's one of the places that probably still has the plumbing underneath the deck for that. The other thing is that there was a place up on Sun Deck that served, it was like a deli. They served like pizza and sandwiches and stuff. I think it was called Hollywood Deli. And that place probably still has the plumbing. Probably still even has the kitchen. So, but it was a huge place. It was huge compared to an ice cream shop. So I'm like, I can't imagine the Hollywood Deli being turned into an ice cream shop. First of all, because it's way up on Sun Deck in a spot that nobody goes to. But second of all, because it's too big for an ice cream shop. So I can't help but think that maybe the First Class Nursery won't be a sushi restaurant, but an ice cream shop. I don't know. All rumor, just let me just state that right now. All rumor so far, no official word on it yet. But the ice cream shop thing did come from people on the Queen Mary, so I don't know. Diamond says, every time I go to the Queen Mary, I take pictures of the bow of the ship. Nice. They need to build like a walkway that goes over that rock work, so you can get like right there in front of the bow of the ship, so you can take cool pictures. They should do that. That'd be really nice. American Loyalist says, how about the second class pool? So the second class pool, the thing that's there today is it's part of the World War II exhibit. So if you go to the stern of the ship, they have the various museums down on the lower levels. You know, the engine room, the steering gear, all that kind of stuff. But there's a space just one deck below that is dedicated to a World War II exhibit with like Winston Churchill information and stuff like that, and how the ship was used during the war. And part of that space used to be the swimming pool. So if they wanted to bring it back, they'd have to severely downsize that exhibit, which isn't impossible. It's not like they don't have enough room on the ship for exhibits. You know, they could move that exhibit somewhere else on the ship. But yeah, so if they wanted to bring the second class pool back, they could. And in fact, I kind of hope they do, because you see, there's an elevator shaft there, two of them actually. A pair of elevators used to go all the way down to the second class pool. And in fact, the elevator shafts are still there. They're hidden, but they're there. And by technicality, you could ride the elevator from promenade deck all the way down through the various hotel levels down to the swimming pool. It is possible. The elevator shafts are there. I know one of the elevators is still functional because they use it as a service elevator now. So I know that it's there. So it is possible to recreate the second class pool and put it right where it belongs. But will they? I mean, I have huge doubts about that. So, Armis Titanic says, didn't Queen Mary have a library? Yes, Queen Mary had 2 libraries. Technically a third if you really want to count the third class garden lounge as a library, because they did have books there. Well, no, actually the main lounge, third class main lounge had a library. So, I mean, you could technically say there were 3, but there were only 2 spaces on the ship dedicated only to books. And that was the first class library, which today is used as a gift shop. So it's still there in the main hall. It's still decorated mostly as it was in the 1930s. You know, you look around, it's still got its wood paneling, everything like that. So, and the bookshelves, they now use that as merchandise shelves. So it's there. It's there. And then they have the second class library, which is still there as well. It's got all its original shelves and everything. It's just that now they use that room as storage for tables and chairs for the Britannia Salon, which is used for like special events. Now, I told one of the people last time I was on the ship, one of the staff of the hotel, one of the like senior level people that I was walking around with, I told her, I'm like, did you know this space used to be the second class library? They said, no, I had no idea. And I told them about it, and I said, the cool thing about this space is that it wouldn't cost much money to restore it. I told them, I'm like, it's got all of its original shelves. As far as I know, all the glass that covers the shelves is intact. It's not broken or anything. It's got all its original light fixtures. They just need, to get new lamps and bulbs in them and stuff like that. And this space could be reopened as either an exhibit of the second class library, or, they could sell books there. So the only problem with that is it's way down at the stern of main deck, far away from where the tourists are going. So it's kind of like, would people find it on their own? Is it worth it to build it? I think it is. I mean, if they're going to rebuild the third class nursery, which is definitely away from all the tourist areas, you might as well rebuild the second class library, because, it's not nearly as far away from the tourists as the nursery is. So I don't know. It should be done. But yeah, Queen Mary technically had 3 libraries. Mad for Games says, do you think it would be feasible for the Queen Mary lounges to be decorated with accurate furniture instead of being empty except for events as they are now? Yes, it is feasible. So one of the things I detailed to Queen Mary management in one of my first emails to them, again, this was ideas they liked. So they have read it, and they told me they liked the idea. I told them that the main lounge, it should be open every day. Maybe it has hours, so maybe it's closed in the early morning, maybe it's closed late at night, but it should be open during the daytime. And I said, it should be at least halfway furnished. So there's some people like Bill Swicklow who have suggested, that the periphery of the room, which means the far sides of the room, should have the furniture, and then the middle can remain open for any kind of thing they want to put there. Like they could put chairs and decorations, or like if they do a dance, which they do there a lot now with the Alex Mendham events, they do a dance in the main lounge. So you can put the furniture on the sides, but leave the center part of the main lounge open, so if they want to do a dance, nobody has to move furniture. Or if they want to do a movie, well then they can bring out the banqueting chairs, the stackable chairs. They could bring those out, put that in the center part. Or if they want to do like a special event, like an auction of artwork or something, then they could just put tables in the center section with all the artworks on them and stuff like that. So Bill Swicklow's idea, which I actually really like for that room, is to only put original looking furniture on the sides of the room, but leave the center open for a flexible space. Because when they do special events like the dances and stuff, they already set up tables and chairs on the sides of the room. You might as well have comfy tables and chairs there. And today we have amazing materials that, it can mimic the original pattern of the furniture, but it's spill and leak proof. So if people drop their wine on a comfy chair, it won't stain the chair. It'll run off the chair. It's like Scotch guarded, but we have materials now that can do that, and so it's like, why not? That's something that should be done. So, and in my suggestion to management, I said that room there could be stuff scheduled for it throughout the day. And the idea is that at certain times of the day, they might have a singer or a comedian or a band playing, and then late at night, not too late at night, but they could do movie nights there. And those events would be ticketed, meaning that if you really want to stay and see it, you have to pay for it, right? So that's how they earn money. And I said they could also do afternoon tea in the main lounge, because they have kitchens nearby where they could serve food and drink, so it's not impossible. I said they could do afternoon tea in the main lounge. That can be an event that people can pay for as well, so that helps to earn money. And every day there could be a slew of events, one after another, that earns money for that room. But in between that, the room is open for people to pass through it. So to walk inside, get, there might be a path that's given to people, with velvet ropes and things like that so people don't stray too far. But there could be a path where they go in from the port side and then out through the starboard side, or from the starboard side to the port side. And you walk through the center of the room, going around the main fireplace. You get a view of both sides of the room on either side of the ropes, and then you just leave, and then the rest of the room remains furnished or whatever and getting ready for the next show or the next event. And I said that way the room can be open throughout the day and it'll earn money, and so they liked that idea. But I hear that it is a tough pill to swallow for some people in the management, because they're afraid of vandalism. And rightfully so, because they just got Unicorns in Battle unveiled and restored. Unicorns in Battle was in such bad condition because people used to walk right up to it and touch it, and they'd rub off the gesso on their fingers. And now they have a plexiglass thing that they can put so people can't touch it. And it only goes up like, a couple of feet, so you can't reach anything above it. But I say, put some velvet ropes up so that way regular people who are passing through, who are not paying for events, they can only go so far. And, and they can't touch anything. And if they do, you'll know who it was, because it's not like you allowed free roam of the room. They can't just, they can't go climbing onto the stage without someone noticing they're there. For the most part, I think there's a lot of mistrust that people go, oh, but you can't trust the public with a place like that. And yeah, you're right. There's always going to be some goofball who is going to break the rules. But social convention means that if there's a group of people walking through the main lounge and they see one person goofing off and running up onto the stage and breaking stuff, those people are either going to convince the person to stop what they're doing, or they're going to go tell security that they're going to, to make the person stop doing what they're doing. So, and I also think that, they could have, like they have tour guides on the ship and stuff like that. They have people on the ship. They could make it so certain people who are in the main lounge at certain times of the day, or not main lounge, main hall, for certain times of the day, they could tell them, okay, you're scheduled to do 15 minutes of main lounge watch, right? So they say, okay, I don't know, Jennifer or something from tours, okay, you're not doing a tour for another 15 minutes, you're now scheduled to watch the main lounge for 15 minutes, right? And then, someone who works the candy shop, they could say, okay, before you go on your lunch, Cindy will take over, but Greg, you've got 15 minutes of watch in the main lounge. It's all it takes, really. Like, just throughout the day, to make sure that the main lounge is watched. They also have security on board the ship. I think that they should invest in increasing the amount of security guards they have, and I'm sure they want to. I'm not, they're not. It's not like they're going, oh, we need less security guards. But anyway, my point is that I think it could be done. And I don't think the whole room should be furnished. I think, like Bill Swicklow said, it should be the sides of the room. Because that way that can leave the center of the room open for special events. So yeah. Let's see here. Skips Happy Hour says, could I get a cookie, Alex? Yeah, I know. I haven't eaten anything. I haven't even barely drank my tea or anything. ScanFan Ed says, hey Alex, hope you do well. Enjoyed your New Orleans videos. Did they do well in your channel? No. If you check out those New Orleans videos, look at the views on them. It's sad, the amount of views I got on those videos. They did not do well at all. They're the worst performing videos I've ever made for YouTube. Which is sad, because I thought they were good. But my friend Chris convinced me to make a New Orleans documentary, because that's why I went to New Orleans, was to film footage for documentaries. And I was going to test the water on my channel by creating those vlogs, and they didn't do well at all. So I thought, well, no one here really wants to see anything about New Orleans, because obviously they would have watched it. But Chris was like, well, those are vlogs, and not everybody likes vlogs. And I'm like, oh, that's true. So he's like, why don't you just try making another documentary out of the footage you took at, in New Orleans, like you planned to do, and just see if people like it. And I'm like, okay, that's fair enough. So I do plan to make a New Orleans documentary in the coming weeks or months or whatever, and put that out. So, because I have all the footage. I took a ton of footage in New Orleans for that very purpose. So, Pete says, hi Alex, any artifacts from the Queen Elizabeth on display or salvage from 1972 Hong Kong fire? Yes. So, there's a lot, but the main one you can see is if you're in Southern California visiting the Queen Mary, go to the city of Torrance, and nearby the Torrance Mall, and unfortunately I don't remember the cross streets, I really don't, but there is a building there where the original anchor from the Queen Elizabeth, is the spare anchor actually, the spare anchor from Queen Elizabeth and her letters, QE, were saved and put on display there. And currently the people that own the building next to it are planning to have that restored. So it may or may not be there when you get there, depending on when it's being restored. But that's there. And then down in New York City on Wall Street, there is a building where the letters QE from the other side of the bow are also on display inside a lobby. I have a video about it, actually. If you really want to know, check out my video called Queen Elizabeth the Magnificent. So it's a documentary, and at the very end, it talks about where you can find those two sets of artifacts, the Torrance property and the New York City property. And you can go to those places to this day to see them. And the one in Torrance will undergo restoration. And I've seen the model of what they want to do, and it looks really cool. I just can't talk about it because it's not for me to talk about. It's not my decision to be able to talk about that kind of thing. So I'm like, "Arr." But I wish I could tell you what they want to do because it looks really neat. But also there's, well, no, I shouldn't go on because there was something I was about to say, but I realized that I should probably shut my app because there are certain things that I can't release to the public yet. So, yeah. Let's see. Armis Titanic says, how are they going to move the Queen Mary if she needs to be in dry dock? So, it's actually... It's relatively easy. Kind of. Kind of. First of all, the breakwater that surrounds the ship is made of rocks. They're not concreted down or anything like that. They're loosely, well, not loosely, they're carefully stacked on top of each other in such a way that they won't collapse, but they can be moved. An earth mover can go in, a huge crane or something, and lift pieces out of them and create an opening for the ship to exit. The ship was originally brought in from the back side. So where the stern is now, there's a rock wall behind the stern. That rock wall originally didn't exist. That was how they moved the ship into the lagoon. They used tugboats. So very simple, nothing complicated, just tugboats. And the problem is that the harbor, Long Beach Harbor, is very, very shallow. So in order to move the Queen Mary into, even as far forward as they did, they had to carve a channel underwater into the bed of the harbor just to fit the hull of the Queen Mary through, because otherwise she would have grounded herself. So, they used tugboats and they just removed the rear rock wall, and then they can tow her out. The only issue I see is that they recently expanded the cruise dock, so now it definitely blocks Queen Mary's way out. which I thought was a very dumb decision because the Long Beach Harbor Commission was talking about redoing that cruise terminal to make it so instead of the ships docking, if this is the Queen Mary here, we're looking straight down at it, and this is the cruise ship, instead of docking them perpendicular, the idea was to dock them like this, so the bow of the cruise ship is pointed towards the land. And there would be space for 2 cruise ships, or even 4. And then there would be a clear open area behind the Queen Mary if they ever wanted to tow her out of the lagoon. And unfortunately, before they could even implement that, all they did was they expanded the current dock, and now it blocks Queen Mary's way out. So I have heard that, what they can do is they can create a channel next to the Queen Mary and then open up part of the rock wall next to the Queen Mary, and she can kind of scooch her way out through the side, almost as if you're parallel parking in reverse, so you're kind of like, coming out in reverse. So they could do that. It would be extremely expensive, but I mean, if you need to dry dock a ship that earns you lots of money and creates tourism, it's worth it, So that's how they would do it. All right. Oh, Diamond left. See you later, Diamond. The shipyard says, I wish we had a video tour of the Queen Mary right after she left service like the SSUS did. There is a video. Look up... Oh, what's it called? There's a video online. It was done by the singer. Come on, what's her name? I'll look it up. I have her name on the tip of my tongue, but I don't remember her name right now. Oh, come on. Petula Clark. So look up the video. I think it's called Tribute to a Queen, and it's the song. Well, it's like. Yeah, okay. So look up RMS Queen Mary 1968 Petula Clark Live for Life. So there's a video of that. It's a music video, but it was taken in 1968. And that was when the ship was in Long Beach. And so the ship is without power or anything because the ship runs off of British electrical systems, and in the United States, there's no way to give her there was no way to give her shoreside power right after she retired because the American electrical system is not compatible with the British system. So the ship was very dark, but they have a few moments where they have like a flashlight on and during the song, and they show certain rooms and things in the dark. So there is a video about that. So Dino says, hey Alex, hope all is going good. Do you know if the Queen Mary separated the classes to use the pool on the ship during her service days? Yes. So the first class pool, after World War II, not before, but after World War II, they allowed third class. I believe even it might have been in the 1960s that they did this, like 1962. Third class was allowed to use the first class pool during certain designated times of the day. So they would say this block of time is for first class, this block of time is for third class, and then they'd alternate again for the rest of the day. And between both classes using it, the room was emptied of its people. The pool was drained and cleaned, because they don't have a filtration system like modern pools where it's just constantly running. They had to drain the pool to clean the water. So what they would do is, after, let's say, after first class finished using the pool, they would drain the pool, they'd clean the whole room, dry it out, because, you know, it'd be full of water because people walking around with their wet feet and stuff. They'd dry out the whole room, clean it, sanitize it, that kind of thing. And then they drain the pool, filter the water, and then put the water back in the pool. And then they get fresh, fluffy towels and fill they had a pool attendant who worked behind a counter, gave you fresh towels. So he'd have all that restocked, all that kind of stuff. And they'd clean out ashtrays because you could smoke in the room. So they'd clean out the ashtrays, all that stuff. The room would be completely refreshed, and then third class could use it. And then again, after third class was done, they'd clean the whole room again, and then get it ready for first class again. So it alternated like that after World War II. I want to say after 1962. But originally that room was first class only. In the 1930s, it was first class only. So yeah. But the second class pool was always for second class, and the reason why they couldn't alternate that room was because actually the second class pool is so far away from third class areas, because it's on Titanic. Generally speaking, first class spaces were on the top levels, third class spaces were on the bottom levels, and second class was towards the stern. That's on Titanic. On Queen Mary it was different. First class got all the levels in the center of the ship. Third class had areas towards the bow, and then also at the very bottom level of the stateroom levels. So it was D deck. Third class got all of D deck on the starboard side. And some second class was starboard side aft on D deck as well. I think. I'm doing this off of like memory. I don't have it in front of me, so I can't tell you for sure. But yeah, so anyway, the point is, the second class pool was so far away from third class that third class would have had to pass through first class to get to that pool. So that's why the second class pool was only for second class, is because they honestly could not, there was no way to get third class people into the pool room of second class pool room without passing through first class and disturbing the first class people. So yeah. And yeah. And there was no way they were going to make first class people use the second class pool, because the first class pool was so fancy, it was built for first class people. So yeah, that's a little fun fact for you. Stormliner asks, I might have missed it, but what's your favorite part of the RMS Queen Mary and why? My favorite part? If you're asking like my favorite room on the RMS Queen Mary that still exists is the first class main lounge. I just think it's a really nice room, and especially when it's furnished and stuff like that, it just looks so beautiful. So first class main lounge. But a space that no longer exists that I consider my favorite was the second class overflow lounge on A deck. So I have I believe I have that on the RMSQM wiki page. So you might be able to find that there. I don't remember if I got to doing that, but it's on A deck, and I'm sure it's on there. But yeah, and it was the overflow lounge. Beautiful, beautiful room. So which actually, here's a little chance for you guys to see. So I don't know if you guys know this. Sorry, I'm shifting a lot because my butt is starting to hurt. But I don't know if you guys know this, but me and my friend Shiloh, we run a free website that is an encyclopedia of everything about Queen Mary, full of rare pictures, high quality 4K pictures, and it's everything that has to do with the Queen Mary. And there's even a section where you can virtually kind of explore the ship deck by deck by clicking on, like, you know, let's say you want to see something on Promenade Deck, you click on Promenade Deck, then it gives you an option of, like, main hall, main lounge, you know, smoking rooms, blah, blah, blah. You can click on any one of those. You can click on, you know, main hall, and then in that page, you have all the different rooms in the main hall, the lecture room, the library, the drawing room, all that, you know, so you can explore the ship kind of virtually, see the history of the places, how it was designed, how it was engineered, how it was decorated, and then what happened to it, how it's changed over the years. So there's things like that. You can also, on that website, you can learn about the restoration work that's going on the ship, and the repairs that have been made so far. Everything on the website. You can learn about the celebrities. You can learn about the history of the ship. Although the history page is not fully complete, but a lot of it is there. Especially the World War II stuff is on there. But the whole website is like a Wikipedia. And everything, all the sources are cited. So if you're like, oh, where did Alex get this information? You'll see there's a number next to a lot of the paragraphs that corresponds to a source of where the information can be found. And so everything is cited. So that way, if you're a kid or someone in college and you need to do a report and you're like, I want to do about the Queen Mary, you know, the wiki is a credible source. So that website is called RMSQM Wiki, and it's part of the Mira Hezh overall website. But it's a website of its own. The link is in the description below, so it's all the way at the bottom. But yeah, you can find that there. It's a really cool website, like I said, full of tons of pictures, some of it rare photographs. And on the main page, you can see our newest articles. So the latest stuff that's been written for the website. There's links to it at the bottom of the main page, and it's called like "What's New Here" or something like that. So, yeah. So really cool website. Please check it out, you guys. I think you guys will really love it. Let's see. RMS Titanic says, what would be a good idea for something they could put on the Queen Mary? I have an idea, but I can't tell you what it is, because unfortunately that's something I'm working on right now. I'm working with an outside company for an idea that would go on the Queen Mary. And we want to pitch it to management and let them know and talk all about it, but I can't reveal what that is, unfortunately. So, yeah. Matthew Mahoney says, why not build a Lido deck pool on the Queen Mary like what Queen Elizabeth had on the main deck aft? So, they can't. Because, first of all, the ship is now considered a historic vessel. They cannot just build a new pool on the ship, because there would be certain restrictions that would prevent that from happening. Not that it would be impossible, but there are restrictions that would prevent that from happening. Plus, I would be the first person to protest that. I would use every power of influence I had to make sure that didn't happen. because it's a historic vessel, leave it as close to as it was as possible. You know, there's already pool rooms on the ship, or there was. You know, there's a first class pool, there's a second class pool. They could rebuild either one to install a pool for hotel guests. In fact, I think, you know, the most practical one to use would be the first class pool. But yeah, so. But the other thing too is Disney tried, before the ship became part of the National Register of Historic Places, Disney had control of the ship prior to that. And they wanted to build a swimming pool on the main deck area like Queen Elizabeth, but instead of, what Queen Elizabeth did was they added a level up to promenade level from the main deck. So the whole main deck was filled in by the swimming pool, to the point where it connected to the docking bridge even. And they realized that that area of the stern could not hold that much weight. It just wasn't designed for that. And then they decided, well, what if we put it like on the poop deck, which is the very, very, very stern of the ship. And they even went as far as to remove almost all the docking equipment from the poop deck, all the winches and capstans and stuff like that. They removed almost all of that, leaving behind just a few bollards for making sure the ship was tethered to the dock. And they did some structural testing in that area and realized there wasn't enough strength in that part of the ship either for a pool. So the ship really cannot handle the weight of a pool back there. It just can't. It's too heavy. Queen Elizabeth was built ever so slightly different from Queen Mary. It was more robust towards the stern because Queen Mary had vibration issues, and they discovered that when the Queen Mary had her maiden voyage and all of that. And so by the time Queen Elizabeth was built, they knew how to restructure the stern of the ship to be stronger. And it was that restructuring of the stern of Queen Elizabeth that made it possible to build a pool. Queen Mary, unfortunately, just cannot handle the weight in that stern section of the ship. So, but they could redo the first class pool or build a brand new second class pool in the same place it used to be to, to allow hotel guests to enjoy. They could build a pool on the dock even, they have plenty of space in that parking lot. They could build a nice, beautiful, pool area with, plants and stuff like that, make it look nice, so there's plenty of places they could do it. But in my opinion, the ship should be left to look as she did, either from 1936 or all the way to 1967. There shouldn't be anything on the ship that looks different from that. So that's my opinion, because it's a historic vessel. The more you alter it and change it, the less historic it will feel. So, Jeffrey says, "Hey Alex, I saw the McVitie's hobnobs at the store and tried them for the first time. They are so good. Thanks for recommending them." Aren't they amazing? I have them right here. I haven't even eaten them yet, but they're so good. Titanic asks, "Do you know RMS Empress Carrera? She's the fastest ocean liner in an upcoming series." I don't know. 39 knots, wow. Is it like a TV show or something? Sargent says, "I really like your new podcast with your friend." Thank you so much. I hope it'll be a popular podcast someday, because I don't think there's anything quite like it. History on the Lakes I did a live stream last week that specifically discussed all of that, and I'm not optimistic about it at all. So you can learn all about that. I even talked about it earlier in this live stream too. Um, Alex asks, I've always been fascinated by the submarine next to the Queen. What are your thoughts on its potential future? We actually just talked about that a few minutes ago. It cannot be saved, it cannot be restored. It has to be removed. And the city of Long Beach will probably remove it and demolish it and throw it away by the end of the year. Because it cannot be saved. It's so badly corroded and damaged. So, it doesn't have a future, unfortunately. It will be removed at some point. Yeah. So, that's kind of what's going on with that. Someone says, "Can you sing us a few bars of the song?" I think they meant the song "Downtown." I can't sing. Artemis Titanic says, "Do you think it'll be kind of sad to watch the SS United States sink?" I mean, kind of. I mean, yes, it'll definitely be very sad, but I don't see a future for it. I really don't think the ship has a future. In every way I played in my head, I'm going to go off on a rant real quick about some people who've sent me comments over the past week, because last week I did a video all about the SS United States. It was entirely dedicated to the SS United States and it's, what's happening right now with it. And there were people who, I talked in my live stream about, how do I say this? Of course, there are people who really hope that it will be saved, right? But the thing is that the people who are ultimately going to pay for it is going to be investors. And let's just say, because the New York coalition has written to Donald Trump and asked if he will save it. So even Donald Trump would be like an investor. He would think of it from the exact same point of view. Investors care more about whether something will return their investment, meaning make money, a profit. They care more about that than the sentimental value of the ship itself. That's just how it has to be. I mean, the only people who would invest that much money and not care about making the money back are some truly, gracious but naive people. So the thing is that there were people who didn't like what I had to say in my live stream last week, and they said, no, the ship has value and blah blah blah. And I'm like, the ship has sentimental value. It does not, however, have monetary value, and that's monetary value is what matters for making the ship restored. You can't tell an investor who's probably never heard of the SS United States. You can't tell him. He's going to say, why should I restore this ship, right? Like, why should I pay $400 million to restore this ship? What does it do for me? And you can't go, oh, well, it won the blue ribbon. He goes, okay, is that an official title? Well, no, it's not an official title. It never was. It's technically just a title given from one company to the other saying, hey, congratulations, you had the ship that crossed the ocean the fastest. It's not recognized by any official groups or anything like that. Yes, there is a trophy called the Hales Trophy, but it's not official. It's someone was like, hey, it'd be cool if we had like a world's fastest ship kind of trophy, and they made it, but it's not linked to the Blue Riband. Just because you win the title of the Blue Riband does not mean you automatically get the Hales trophy. They're not linked. It's two separate things. So, so there's a lot of people that think that the Blue Riband holds the Hales trophy. It doesn't. It holds the Blue Riband, which is an unofficial title that is simply spoken by word. There's no ranking anywhere that gives it any kind of official protections or anything like that for being a Blue Riband holder. It's not like winning the Olympics and you get a gold medal and you're told for the rest of history, you know, this is the person who in 2008 won the, you know, the I don't know, the sprinting record or whatever. It's not like that. It's just it's spoken by word. So that fact alone, an investor will not look at that and go, "Oh, okay, that makes me money." It doesn't, you know. And most people in the country, you know, unless they're an Oceanliner fan, have never heard of the SS United States. So there's no major tourism draw right now for anybody to visit the SS United States. It's different for the Queen Mary because the Queen Mary is still talked about all over the world. So there is enough tourism draw to give her 2.5 million visitors per year to sustain her. SS United States, I doubt there would be enough visitors to even get to half that amount. So yeah, you know, an investor is going to look at, okay, well, what will save me money? Well, it's going to be the interiors of the ship. The interiors and the design of the interiors of a ship can give it monetary value. If you've got, you know, if you've, let's say you have a room that is designed with this Art Deco style where the ceiling has this stepped back design and the lights are, you know, create halos of lights around the room, right? It's a beautiful looking room. That creates monetary value. That's something someone will want to see. And if it's there and it's already built, well, all you gotta do is open the doors and let people walk in. That's free money, right, to see that room. But on the SS United States, all the interiors were removed. All that's left is a steel skeleton. If you want that room that will make people happy, you will have to build it. And the amount of money it costs to build that room may not come anywhere near the amount of money that people pay to get in that room. You know what I'm saying? So an investor looks at the interiors as an investment. And if it doesn't have interiors, well then that's almost 100% costs up front for the investor. And they are not interested. Hence the reason why for the last 30 years, the SS United States has been sitting in Philadelphia and nothing's been done. There's no reason to believe that if the ship had not left Philadelphia, that anything would have been done in the future. There's no reason to believe that anything would have happened, because it would have already happened. So, you know, that's kind of my opinion on it, but there are people who, you know, they love the ship, they don't want to hear that, and so they go, no, the ship has value. And it's like, the only monetary value, monetary, not nostalgic, not historical, monetary value that the ship has is the steel in which it is made of. And even then, it probably costs more money to dismantle the ship for scrap than it does to just sink it. So the best thing to happen to that ship in the last 30 years is the Conservancy's idea to build a massive museum on the beach, or the beach area. So yeah, that's kind of something I wanted to kind of straighten out, because there were a lot of people who commented and were like, oh no, the ship has value. And it's like, it has nostalgic value, it has historical value, but it does not have monetary value. It has no monetary value whatsoever. The fact that it's cheaper to sink it than to scrap it tells you it has no monetary value. So, Armis Titanic asks, why do you think the SS United States is still the fastest ship? Well, it's actually kind of a disappointing answer, really, because if you were around half an hour ago when I was talking about how as ships like Queen Mary and SS United States went faster, they would shake and shudder like you wouldn't believe. You know, on Queen Mary's maiden voyage, it was said that people in second class were being shaken out of bed. That's how much the ship shook. And of course, Queen Mary was reinforced later on. I think in 1956, they reinforced a lot of the interiors in the stern to reduce the shaking, but they couldn't fully get rid of it. Now, SS United States had a similar story. On its maiden voyage, when it was going 34 knots, it was shaking and shuddering so badly, passengers complained. That was one of the major complaints of the voyage. Aside from there were complaints about the interiors of the ship, that there was no natural materials, that it felt very synthetic, essentially. But aside from that, the biggest complaints was the shaking on the ship. The whole ship shook and shuddered because as it was going 34 knots, I mean, there are just certain things, the cavitations and the like I was saying earlier, as the ship was going so fast that as it was plowing through ocean swells, it was hitting them like they were concrete walls. So the ship would just boom every time it hit an ocean swell. And so the faster you go on a massive ship like an ocean liner, the more uncomfortable the ride is. I mean, yes, you can design ships with even more sleek hulls and whatnot, and you can reduce that shaking and shuddering, but the faster and faster you build it, the more that shaking and shuddering will still happen. It's just natural. You know, there is a limit to how fast you can build anything before it becomes an uncomfortable ride. So, because the faster you go, the more the water starts to act like concrete. Have you ever, heard about how, like, people who fall off bridges and things, it's like they're slamming into concrete when they hit the water. It's the same kind of thing. If you've ever driven on a highway or a freeway really, really fast in heavy rain, it sounds like your car is being pelted with gravel. And so the same thing happens for an ocean liner. The faster it goes, the more the water starts to act like something solid. And so it becomes an extremely uncomfortable ride. And after SS United States won the Blue Riband, it became very apparent, especially after Queen Mary won the Blue Riband, it became very apparent that there was no point in making a faster ship because it won't be a comfortable ride. And SS United States ended up having the same exact service speed as Queen Mary. The service speed on Queen Mary was 28 knots. The service speed on SS United States was also 28 knots. Because 28 knots is the fastest you can go without creating an uncomfortable ride. And so that's the reason why no ship has ever challenged the SS United States, is because they realized it was pointless. You would never be able to create a crossing on a ship at 28 or above 28 knots without it feeling uncomfortable for the passengers. And then the other thing too is the exorbitant costs. It costs so much money for the SS United States to go 34 knots, and anything faster, exorbitant more costs. So it's not on a linear scale, it's on an exponential scale. So the more knots you go, the more fuel it'll have to consume at an exponential rate to go faster. So it just was not economically feasible. So, that's another thing too, is that the SS United States, it holds the record. People go, oh, it's never been challenged. And it's like, well, that's true. It's never been challenged. But it's never been challenged because it's just not economically feasible to build a ship that goes faster. It just isn't, doesn't make economic sense. And all for an official title. An unofficial title. It's unofficial. Nobody really recognizes it as an official title. It's just something you say. It's like, oh, it has the Blue Riband because it's the fastest to cross the Atlantic in a certain amount of time. So, yeah. That's kind of why they haven't built one faster. Mark WSL says, why drain the pool? He's talking about the first class pool every time in case people peed in it, I guess. No, not necessarily. I mean, pools need to filter. So, like your local swimming pool at, you know, like let's say a public pool, or maybe your friend has a backyard with a swimming pool. Pools are constantly filtered, right? They have either a pump or some kind of floating device that constantly filters the pool. They have to, because first of all, chlorine and stuff, it will dissipate. It will, if you leave, let's say you fill a jug of chlorine, fill a jug with chlorine water, right? And you leave the cap open and you let it sit for 24 hours. At the end of the 24 hours, it won't have chlorine in it anymore. It'll be such a reduced chlorine rate that it will be closer to safe drinking. I think if you leave it for 48 or 72 hours, it should be fully safe to drink. But nevertheless, it's a lot. It's very similar to the pools on the Queen Mary and stuff like that. It was salt water, but it was also electrolyzed, which means that there was a little bit of chlorine in it through the electrolyzing process. And so the same thing goes for it, you know. But also because when you have people swimming in a pool, they do things like sweat, right? They sweat into a pool. You don't realize you're sweating because you're already wet, you know. But you do sweat into a pool. Bodily, you know, skin oils, you know, come off in a pool. Skin cells, hair comes off in a pool. Yeah, people might pee in the pool, but I mean, it's very unlikely back then, but it could happen. You know, people accidentally swallow water, spit it back out again, you know, or they get water in their nose and they, you know. So things happen in pools, and modern pools constantly filter. But back then, on the Queen Mary at least, they didn't have a constant filter. The room that did the filtering was the water softening plant, which was right in front of boiler room 1. So it was cheaper to filter, like it was cheaper to, what's the word I'm looking for? But instead of installing machinery at each pool to filter it, it was just easier to send that water to the water softening plant for filtration, because that's what that room was built for. It was built for filtering all kinds of water, seawater, fresh water. It was built for that purpose. So the pools drained into the water softening plant for filtration. And if they wanted to, they could just outright dump all the water into the ocean and then refill it with clean salt water from the water softening plant. Again, it was partially electrolyzed for sanitation, so that also meant it gave it a little bit of chlorine, but it was still salt water. And what's the word? What's what I'm trying to say? So that's why the pools had to be drained. They didn't have a filter. They had to be drained in order to be filtered. And you drain it because people do things in pools. People sweat, skin cells, hair, all that comes off in a pool, you know. So yeah, that's why. The Shipyard says, how did they get rid of the cigarette smell from the Queen Mary? I'm sure she reeked of it. So it wasn't really till the 50s and 60s that people were smoking the stinky cigarettes that we know today, right? Like, modern cigarettes are very stinky. But back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, mainly the cigarettes that people smoked were like literally mini cigars. So they had a very fragrant smell to them. They weren't stinky, they were fragrant. And so even the cigarettes back then were fragrant. Again, late 50s, 60s, that's when you start getting the stinky cigarettes. Just the ones that nobody really cared for them to be fragrant. So the ship's smells like cigars, not like cigarettes. And if you walk around the ship today, on occasion, not very often, but on occasion, you can smell the cigar smell. It's fragrant, almost floral, kind of. If you've ever smelled a cigar before, there are parts of the ship that still smell like cigars, but not very strong. How did they get rid of the smell? Well, quite simply, they didn't. The smell just over time dissipated. You know, as the ship gets older and people don't smoke on the ship anymore, as it gets older, that smell fades. It will eventually go away altogether. But when I was there in 2020, when you walked around the ship, you could smell that smell. In 2020, it was instant for me. I got the first time I walked on the ship in 2020 was on A deck, and as soon as I walked in the ship, it smelled like two things. It smelled like a library because of the wood paneling everywhere. It smelled like a library where people smoked cigars. You could smell the cigar smoke. It wasn't super strong, but it definitely doesn't smell like fresh air. So you know the smell. But last time I was on the ship, which was this past February, the ship smelled like a library for the wood paneling, and it smelled like lemon polish, because up until now, no one's been polishing the wood panels. So lately, the ship has a new kind of cleaning policy where housekeeping, when they're not doing housekeeping work, they go around the ship and they polish the wood panels. I actually saw it happening. Because we were walking around the ship throughout the day, and in certain places you'd see the housekeeping ladies going around, and just polishing the wood panels with their lemon polish. It wasn't Pledge, because I know the smell of Pledge, but they had a lemon polish of some kind. And first of all, it made the wood panels so beautifully shiny and glossy. But second of all, the ship smelled ever so slightly of lemon, which was actually very pleasant. So it was nice. It was like walking into a library where people were cutting up lemons. It was really nice. It was actually a very pleasant smell. So, and then it also helped that the carpets that were installed throughout the 1980s and 1990s, those probably reeked of stinky cigarette smell, because in the 80s and 90s people would just walk around places smoking cigarettes. And those carpets stink. Well, a lot of those carpets have been replaced, but the ones that haven't have been deep cleaned. Like, they've been carpet cleaned, and now those carpets no longer stink. So, I don't know. Yeah, it just doesn't have that smell of cigarettes. But on occasion, like I said, you go to a certain place on the ship, and ever so slightly you can smell the cigar smoke, and it's an interesting smell. So, yeah. Shy Low says, "Hi Alex, have you ever been to the Spruce Goose?" I have, in fact, twice. The Spruce Goose is about 35 minutes away from where I live, down in McMinnville, Oregon. I've been to that museum twice because the Spruce Goose is so cool. It's the only airplane I've ever liked. Even to this day, I'm like, it's such a cool airplane. It's the only airplane I like. And yeah, it's interesting. I suggest anybody who's traveling through Oregon, if you're going to pass through the McMinnville area, visit the Spruce Goose. You won't be disappointed. It's such a cool airplane, and it's so huge that all the airplanes around it look like toys scattered around it. Literally, there were 3 planes that could fit underneath one of the wings of the Spruce Goose. It was just mind-boggling. So yeah, definitely give it a visit. It's so great, and they keep it so well restored and maintained. It's nice. let's see. History on the lakes. Yeah, I know. You've been saying that a few times already. Justin says, on the Queen Mary, did they ever think of enclosing the well deck during her service life? I don't know if they thought about it, but they certainly never made any attempts to do that. I'm trying to think, like... I wish I had a deck plan of Queen Elizabeth in front of me, because... Because they have, under the well deck, there's another capstan for rough weather, right? So if it's really rough weather, and I mean, like, it's maybe icy, and you can't even walk out onto the well deck because there's so much ice or something, or maybe it's like, I don't know, fire falling from the heavens. I don't know. They have an extra capstan on the deck below the well deck that's indoors and enclosed, and it's there for emergencies, but also for really, really bad weather where you can't even use the capstans up above. Now, when they enclosed the well deck for Queen Elizabeth, they had enclosed capstans. Did they need the extra one on the level below that? I don't know, actually. I need to see a deck plan to know for sure if it's there. But I imagine that since the Queen Elizabeth didn't have a well deck, then the capstans that were already there were already enclosed, so they probably didn't need another one on the deck below. So I imagine that with Queen Mary, they already had a capstan on the deck below. They had what they needed. There was no need to enclose more of the space later on. So, yeah, I think that's what happened. But yeah, as far as I know, they've never made an attempt to enclose it. Okay. Skip's Happy Hour is talking about SS United States. Even if they restored her, it's so boring inside that it does not make sense. So prior to a couple days ago or something, I had seen like pictures and stuff of the SS United States, and the pictures were always taken at a certain angle that you saw a beautiful background, right? Very fancy looking, and you're like, oh, that's a beautiful ship. But then, like, when you really research it and you look at all the public spaces on the ship, there was virtually no decoration. It was not white walls, but a single color wall everywhere. Even the light fixtures were not fancy. They were very simple light fixtures. No decorative feature whatsoever. The furniture had no patterns. It was simple color furniture. Even the furniture didn't even look that fancy. I mean, I'm sure it was. It had to be, because it was all custom made and it's designed to float. So when people say that the interiors of the SS United States are boring, I think now I understand why they say that. Because there are very few public spaces on the ship that actually had decoration. And by the way, when you Google SS United States, there's all these beautiful interior pictures that show up, but more than half of them are actually from the SS America. They're mislabeled. They're just labeled SS United States for some reason on Google, but they're actually from SS America. But when you look at places like look up SS United States reading and writing room. It's a very blank space with no decoration whatsoever. So I understand why people say it's boring. And honestly, if an investor looked at that and said, wait, I have to pay to put that back in? the investor would be like, oh no, how is that going to make me money? We need decoration in that space. We need something to make it look nice. So yeah, it's weird. And then I've seen like images of the cabins on the SS United States. Only the suites had a nice decoration to them. The regular cabins were all quite bland looking. No decoration, especially not on the walls. I mean, I would say the duvet on the beds probably had more personality than the rest of the room. So I don't know. It's interesting. I didn't know the SS United States looked like that until a couple days ago. And I was actually quite shocked. You know, but people will tell you that when the SS United States was in service, passengers rode the SS United States for the novelty of being on the world's fastest ocean liner. But the novelty quickly wore off, and Queen Mary was still the more popular ship than SS United States. Queen Mary was more popular than SS Normandy. I mean, SS Normandy was beautiful. I mean, even I can't deny that. SS Normandy was beautiful. But it was too opulent. So it's kind of funny. You got the two main competitors of the Queen Mary was SS Normandy, which was too opulent, and people preferred the Queen Mary because it was just the right amount of fanciness. And then you got SS United States, which had the novelty of being the world's fastest ocean liner, but it was lacking in decoration and personality, and it felt very synthetic because there was no natural materials on it. So people preferred the Queen Mary. So that's not a flex or anything. I'm not trying to put down the SS United States. I'm just stating this is what happened in the past. But it's interesting to see the contrast, because you would think SS Normandy would be the most popular ship in the world with how beautiful the interiors were. But in the end, people know what they want. And even the fanciest people would, be on the SS Normandy and go, you know what, this is a bit too much. I'm looking for something comfortable, not something that feels like a palace, And Queen Mary kind of served that purpose. She was fancy looking, but she was very warm and inviting, Lots of natural materials and woods and things. It created a very, welcome home atmosphere. Normandy you don't look at Normandy and think, welcome home. You look at Normandy and think, welcome to the Palace of Versailles, or something, SS United States gives me, welcome to the IRS kind of vibe. I'm not kidding. When I looked at the pictures of the SS United States the other day, I was like, this feels like a government office. It doesn't feel like an ocean liner. So yeah, that's just my opinions. I've got very pointed opinions, you guys. I know. Let's see. Wild Smiley says, I wonder if Queen Mary's first-class long gallery can be restored. It can, because all the paneling is still in place. Everything is still there. They just have these plaster walls that are put up to divide the spaces. But if they take down those plaster walls, the room would look just as it did in the 1960s. So I think it could happen, and I want them to do it. It was one of my suggestions to the management, actually, that they restore the long gallery to its full size, put back the midships bar, but the midships bar would be a Starbucks, because they've already got the observation bar, which sells alcohol. They've got the speakeasy down on B deck, and they serve alcohol at Sir Winston's. They serve alcohol for dinner at Chelsea's Chowder House, I believe. So it's like, you got plenty of alcohol. Use the midships bar in the long gallery as the Starbucks. And I think that'd be great, because people waiting to get seated at Chelsea's Chowder House can just sit in the long gallery and just relax. I think that's a perfect idea, honestly. Let's see. Mark, yes, for the swimming pools, at least once per day, the water was completely changed out with fresh salt water that was filtered. So yeah, it was from the ocean. So it was filtered from the ocean, and they would completely change out the pool water at least once per day. But yeah. Armis Titanic says, why did ocean liners stop having 4 funnels? They simply didn't need 4 funnels. I know that's a very vague answer, but it's as simple as that. They just didn't need 4 funnels. Ships had fewer and fewer boilers over the years, opting for larger boilers as opposed to a ton of small boilers. Queen Mary had 24 Yarrow boilers. Queen Elizabeth had 12. So there were fewer boilers and therefore less need for stacks, to the point where Queen Elizabeth had only 2 funnels as opposed to, Aquitania, which had 4. Alex asks, are there any other ships in the world today that serve a similar purpose to that of Queen Mary, such as hotel, museum, etc.? Yes. There's the SS Rotterdam, which is in Amsterdam, I believe. I think. Do I have that right? I don't remember. But SS Rotterdam. And then there is the QE2, Queen Elizabeth II, which is located in Dubai. So there are at least 2 other ships. Oh, and there is the Japanese ship. I don't remember the name of the Japanese ship. I'm sorry, you guys. But there's a ship in Japan that was an ocean liner and is currently used as a museum. Some people say you can stay on board in the rooms, so it's like a hotel. But that's not what I saw from video. But then again, that video was taken during the pandemic. But anyway, people say it's a hotel and museum as well. So yeah, it's... I want to say it's near Hokkaido. Anyway, but yeah, it's the only ocean liner museum in Japan. And yeah. Chilling in the Frozen North says, SS United States, bland and boring interior equals low maintenance costs. That's true. Let's see. Appalachian says, Alex, been a while since I caught an afternoon tea. Happy I could at least catch the end of this one. It's like catching up with an old friend. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm happy when people are able to make it to these live streams. Let's see. Oh, man. I don't... sorry, Mark. Yeah, Mark says your phone should be getting the Android 15 One UI 7 update soon. I don't want that, honestly. Yeah, I don't want that. But, I don't really have much of a choice because these phones nowadays, if you don't update them, they just either shut off or they update themselves. So it's like you can't. Like, they just force you to do the updates. That happened once where it said, do you want to update? And I put update later. And then it kind of like, it said, we'll remind you in like 24 hours. But then like an hour later, the phone just automatically shut off and then updated itself. So I was pretty upset about that because I needed to make a call. So there is a gnat flying around now. It's probably attracted to the sweets on my plate. Okay, so... Stormliner says, don't forget the public image of the 4 funnels. You know what happens to Britannic, Lusitania, Titanic, ships like that. I guess there was kind of a bad reputation for ships with 4 funnels, yeah. But then you had Mauritania, Aquitania. Any others? Yeah, there were a few. Hikawa Maru. Thank you so much, Kevin. Yes, the ship was called the Hikawa Maru. Or if you want to say it the Japanese way, Hikawa Maru. Aqua says there's also SS Great Britain, but that's not a hotel. Yeah, actually, I forgot that one. So yeah, there is, in the city of Bristol, England, there is the SS Great Britain, which is one of the places I want to visit if I ever go to the UK, which increasingly becomes more impossible with every day. I want to see the SS Great Britain, and that's a museum in the city of Bristol, which is pretty cool because it's one of the first steam-powered ocean liners. Not the first, but one of the first steam-powered ocean liners. So, pretty cool. Yeah. Anyway, folks, we've been on here for almost 3 hours. I'm going to end the live stream here, and then I'm going to finish my biscuits because I never even ate them at all throughout the whole live stream. But thank you guys so much for joining me. Keep an eye out for any videos I post. And check out RMSQM Wiki. It's a really, really cool website, you guys, for everything related to the Queen Mary, its history, its engineering, its design, architecture, all that kind of stuff. And I've been adding to it every week. There's new stuff on it every week. So be sure to check it out. Link is in the description below. Thank you all for watching, everybody, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.